The hot spots in the world have just gotten hotter. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you here every single night. Chris Young is my guest this evening. He is a candidate for mayor in Providence. I'm not quite sure how many times Chris has run for office, but it's often. He will be here to discuss why he wants to be your next mayor, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, it has been a tough day for news internationally and here at home. The rundown has this airline catastrophe in it, certainly. The Russian sanctions yesterday that kind of were a prequel, if you will, to coin a word, for today's activity, possibly, who knows. Back here at home, the Journal takes an incredible stand here and is kind of getting a little bit too goopy, I think. What else do we have this evening? Yeah, this Republican primary is becoming stupid. Not just a circus act, but dumb on X number of levels. And just in case you were wondering, Eyewitness News did a nice little recount on who thinks what running for governor about 38 studios. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays in both primary and general elections. So let us dig into our rundown. This, I mean, God bless the souls that have been lost. Some 280 passengers and another 15 crew members, so 295 people lost. Here's the headline. Malaysian Airlines passenger jet reportedly shot down in Ukraine. Now, of course, this is how the day is gone. By the time you see the broadcast this evening, there may be some more information. We record our broadcast nightly, just prior to the time that you see it. So there may be some more developments, but as the afternoon wore on, it seemed more and more likely that this was some kind of ground-to-air missile. Here's the latest.
Huge plumes of smoke rose from a field in Ukraine after a Malaysian airliner carrying nearly 300 people crashed near the Russian border. This amateur video purports to show the aftermath. A Ukrainian official says a Boeing 777 like this one was shot down over a town in the eastern part of the country. Reports say a ground-to-air missile hit the plane as it was flying at an altitude of 33,000 feet. In a tweet, Malaysia Airlines confirmed it lost contact with flight MH17 flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It appears to have gone down in a region where Ukrainian forces are battling pro-Russian fighters.
Yeah, you got a 10-mile stretch where the remains and materials from the plane have landed. Coming from 33,000 feet. Oh my goodness. Now the separatists reportedly are declaring a 2 to 3 day truce to allow for the cleanup. Isn't that nice? Now, pointing fingers at who might have done this, remember the Ukrainians have also the same technology that the Russians do. So until we find out from some kind of independent investigation as to who's to blame for this, we got to kind of keep our powder dry over it. But what an absolute shame this is. And interestingly enough, you know, that they didn't clear the airspace around this area all the way up until mid-afternoon our time today. So pilots were in the air going, what's going on around here, and is it safe to fly? Those poor people that were just going from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur lost their lives, you know, watching movies and reading books. And there are plenty of air travelers right now that are a little tentative about what happens next. Europeans are looking at intelligence, trying to find out if there was something they missed. But for all intents and purposes, right now it points towards some kind of shot in the air. By the way, there are 2 other planes in the last month that have been reportedly shot down, Ukrainians say, by these separatists who are targeting cargo planes. Maybe they thought this was a cargo plane. In the meantime, yesterday, the president went on this additional sanction route. The headline here comes from the Washington Post. The expanded sanctions, and the president spoke about it yesterday.
The new sanctions target 2 big Russian banks, energy companies, and weapons manufacturers.
These sanctions are significant, but they are also targeted, designed to have the maximum impact on Russia while limiting any spillover effects on American companies or those of our allies.
The U.S. accuses Russia of provoking violence in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian separatists are fighting to break away from the new government in Kiev. The Pentagon says in the last few weeks, Russia has been building up its military presence on the Ukraine border. About 12,000 troops are now there.
What we are expecting is that the Russian leadership will see once again that its actions in Ukraine have consequences.
Well, listen, it was interesting and coincidental, I guess, I don't know. The president was on the phone with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, when this plane thing happened. In fact, it was something like, you know, Putin's on the phone. Huh? What? Hold on, Mr. President. What? What? A plane went down? We have a plane down. That kind of thing. Very, very strange. You know, who knows if these sanctions actually caused this kind of action? Hopefully, it's just a mistaken. I doubt it very much. But everything is so fluid at this point. Who knows? We'll just have to see. I have to tell you, these sanctions don't seem to bother Putin that much. But at least they were on the phone together today. Stay tuned. A lot of hot spots in the world right now, including Israel with ground troops moving in. And my goodness, we have our own border crisis right now with young people from Central America coming in. It's fluid out there. A lot for the president to handle on his plate. Next item here at home. I looked at this today in the editorial page. I said, oh, come on, are you kidding, guys? Really? Ed Fitzpatrick wrote a column on Lauren Adrian falling on the sword on the whole Buddy Cianci scenario. This is a guy who was running for mayor as a Democrat, flipped to independent for his filing deadline, and now recently has gotten out of the race, and he's got a lot of attention for this. He spoke to our newsroom about this a couple of days ago.
Clear to me from the field of candidates that we had a risk, and that an unacceptable risk that Buddy could get elected. And I think that would be a terrible thing for the city of Providence. And I can eliminate about half the risk just by getting out.
You know, what Ed chronicles is one thing, but what the editorial board itself put in the paper today, can I read from my little iPad here? Under the headline, Putting Providence First, Lauren Adrian showed that his love for Providence was not merely rhetoric Monday. He withdrew as an independent candidate for mayor, clearly with an eye on helping Providence avoid the humiliation and economic harm that would attend the election of a two-time convicted felon who is running as an independent. Listen, the Journal is all in on Cianci being Satan. And this guy being a hero is a little bit too much. Look, Lauren Adrian would have gotten waxed in the general election running as an independent. It was a dopey move from the get-go. If he wanted to be mayor, he should have tried to win the Democratic primary and face off and let the chips fall where they may. More money, more resources, and getting yourself pummeled in an election ain't no fun. Total benevolence doesn't exist in politics, and the Journal ought to stop trying to create that picture. All right, next item. Quickly, Fung jumps on Block. Yeah, it's getting silly and now stupid in the Republican primary, no doubt. Here's a press release that Alan Fung put out today criticizing Ken Block's treatment of a crime victim. This is the woman that's in the Gina Raimondo ad. Fung is suggesting that Ken Block is gone too far in referring to what he thought might be a quid pro quo with the Raimondo camp. This woman got $25,000 in a victim fund administered by Gina Raimondo. This woman ends up on Gina Raimondo's commercial. Block never mentioned quid pro quo to me, but he did express his disgust over the whole thing.
I know what it's like to have someone save your life. Twice. When my children and I escaped my violent husband, the Crossroads shelter found us a place to stay. And when I was severely beaten by a landlord, the Rhode Island Crime Victims Fund helped me recover.
What you don't do to a victim of crime is trot them out in the public sphere in the form of a paid campaign ad. I find that an amazingly poor taste. The commercial came very shortly after this woman was given a sum total of $25,000 from the Crime Victims Fund, and I just can't believe that the politicization. I can't say that word. The politics, the making of politics inside the Treasurer's office.
Well, listen, Ken Block's perspective is his perspective, but he never picked on the woman in the commercial. Fung says stop picking on the woman in the commercial. This whole thing is getting very personal between Block and Fung, and it's not serving anybody's best interest. We knew it would get this way, but we got a long way to go to the primary. And finally, 38 Studios, and how does it impact the way the voters will feel? You got to know who's on what side of where, in what primary, and how, running for governor, and Walt Buteau has that story.
Our exclusive Eyewitness News Providence Journal poll in June found Democratic primary voters are divided on whether to pay back 38 Studios investors with your tax money. We also discovered the candidates for governor are divided as well.
Priority right now is
to pay or not to pay. That's the question facing lawmakers after the epic collapse of 38 Studios. Three of the Democratic candidates for governor, Clay Pell, Gina Raimondo, and Angel Taveras, say they support paying the loan back to avoid damaging Rhode Island's credit rating. They also say they'd launch an independent investigation into how the deal went down.
38 Studios has been an unmitigated disaster for the state. We have to understand how it happened and make sure it never happens again.
Now we find ourselves, as we often are in Rhode Island, with the taxpayers holding the bag. It's not right, it isn't fair, and it's a lost opportunity.
If we don't get the answers that we deserve, that the taxpayers deserve, I think we should have an independent investigation like the RISD Commission that was set up by Governor Sondland at the time to investigate the banking crisis.
The fourth Democrat running for governor, Todd Giroux, says he's opposed to paying back the loan. On the Republican side, both Ken Block and Alan Fung oppose paying back the loan.
What I'm proposing that we do is that we don't pay on these bonds while there's questions about whether the bonds were correctly underwritten or not.
We need more facts on 38 Studios before we make that payment.
Block and Fung also support an independent investigation into the deal. Independent candidate Thomas Davis tells us he's opposed to paying back the loans.
Well, look, good report by Walt. You know, the primaries doesn't really matter, but if 38 Studios is a hangover for the voters, you'll have a clear choice on that matter in the general, with those major Democrats saying we should have paid and we should continue to pay, and the Republicans saying we shouldn't. Will that resonate going forward? I don't know. You'll have to tell me. Your state of mind, the last segment, can solve that. And, of course, on the radio, weekdays noon to 3. Chris Young running for mayor in Providence next. So this is quite a field we have for the mayor of Providence, no doubt. We've been keeping score and trying to keep the names current. Jorge Elorza, Brett Smiley, Michael Solomon, Christopher Young kind of headline the Democrats. We haven't met Mr. Catone yet, so hopefully we will. We think Dan Harrop's in the race, so we don't know. We may pull out in October with shenanigans. And of course, the elephant in the room is Vincent Buddy Cianci. Chris Young, how many times, welcome by the way. Good to
Thank
see
you very much for having me, Dan.
How many times have you run?
Well, I've run for mayor of Providence 4 times. I'm the only candidate in a Democratic primary that's run before for mayor of Providence. We got 26% of the vote in 2006 for mayor of Providence, more than Daniel Harrop. And we're in the race and trying to bring attention to the issues that matter in Providence.
26% in the primary or the general?
In the primary.
In the primary.
Yep, we did very well. That's the election where Anthony Gemma brought forward that some people were brought in to vote against me in that primary and hired. And I still think that that's a major issue, and election fraud is an issue in Providence. But the concerns of the citizens in the city of Providence are the high car taxes. And one of the main portions of my candidacy will be to repeal the car tax in Providence by taxing Brown University and using that money to repeal the car tax in Providence. But as you know...
completely?
Yes, completely repeal the car tax in Providence.
You want to zero it out?
Zero it out. And actually, we have a little sign here.
I like that. Yeah, there's the
vote Chris Young,
repeal the car tax.
Repeal the car tax.
Well, you know, I think that's a resonating matter, but you know, this is a.
This is. You can keep it up through the whole.
This is.
We need all the publicity.
You can do what you want with your airtime, but here's the thing: the state has much to do with how the car tax is executed. So when you say repeal the car tax, what you're actually saying is take the waiver to the value of the car.
Right,
so there's
exactly.
Right?
Right.
Okay.
And that's what they do in other cities and towns like Narragansett, and the city can pay that themselves through taxing Brown University, and that will relieve a lot of the pressure on citizens in the city. We need a plan in Providence. We need an ultimate objective that we have to achieve. And that needs to be described. And the way that I'm describing it is rebuild Providence, rebuild Rhode Island, and also bring Rhode Island back to life. All of that is encompassed in one plan, and that's what we need to achieve in Providence, to rebuild the city of Providence, to rebuild our economy, rebuild public safety in the city, and create jobs in the city. And these are some of the major focuses of the candidacy.
Rebuild Providence in 1 or 2 bullet points. How?
Well, we need to, first of all, we need to relieve the taxation on the citizens by getting rid of the car excise tax. That's a big issue. Also, we need to lower property taxes and rents by taxing Brown University, using those funds to offer a voucher that citizens can use to reduce their commercial and residential property taxes, as well as the rents in the city of Providence.
We got a busting deficit. We got an $800 million pension unfunded liability.
Right.
Are we going to go to Brown University for it all?
Well,
Are they the culprits here?
They are the culprits, and I think it's time for Brown University to start paying. They have about $10 billion worth of assets that are not taxed, and it's about time that they start paying taxes.
What's your goal for the exact amount of revenue you want from Brown University?
I think that Brown, is paying right now about $3 million a year, and they should be paying about $100 million a year. And I think that they should be paying that. They have a $4 billion endowment, and it's time to go after Brown instead of the citizens in the city of Providence.
How does it match up with how Yale pays New Haven, for instance?
Well, other cities and towns have different programs, and there is no direct application to taxes. The pilot program in Providence, which really is not effective. It's not effective for the cost of the roads, the cost of fire and police for Brown University. Also, these agreements that were signed by Angel Tavares, where he sold 6 city streets to Brown University, and they don't even have to pay for the streets if they're ever taxed. It goes beyond all reason.
So give me a comparable. What is another Ivy League school in a similar city like Yale pay New Haven? I don't know.
This would be the first in the country where there would be a direct tax applied to Brown's property assets. And this will be challenged, I'm sure, and we'll bring it into the federal court to address it. If we can't do that, we'll figure a different way of taxing them. It's not permissible that the citizens in the city of Providence are paying these excessive taxes and nobody's representing them.
Yep. So the single solution for the deficits and the fiscal challenges, just so I'm clear, is Brown.
Not just Brown. Obviously, we need to do other things to bring jobs into the city, like build a sub. That's my daughter. She's that's Emmanuel Mary Catherine.
She don't like Brown either.
She's got a big voice too. Hopefully, she'll be in the political scene soon.
She got excited when you started kicking on Brown.
Right.
Well, she ain't going there in 20 years. I'll tell you that much.
That's for sure. Anyway. And anyways, I hope that Brown pays its fair share, like everyone else does, But we need to generate revenue in the city of Providence by bringing federal dollars as well. There's a subway that was started in Providence. We need to expand that subway to all the different neighborhoods in the city. We need to create a heart of the city in Providence. And we can do that with federal funding. Also, the roads are terrible in Providence, and we need to repair the roads.
All right. Hold your thought. When we come back, we'll pick up on that and a couple other things as well. Brown, I think you got the memo. Stay with us.
And what we want to make sure, as a Democrat, as a proud Democrat, that we nominate the right Democratic nominee to ensure that he doesn't get elected. And so my job is to, one, speak out about what I believe is right and wrong, but then also to make the case that we need to make sure we have the best, strongest, most effective nominee to be able to go toe-to-toe with Buddy Cianci to make sure he doesn't get reelected.
I'm less concerned about some of his felonious stuff as opposed to some of the, I think, incompetence when he was mayor. I think that these finances are not well discussed, and when he says, I did a nice job moving the rivers. Well, okay, and how are you paying for it? Well, we're paying for it now. All that deficit is there, and this is the reason the city is going bankrupt. And he was not a good mayor financially at this particular time. And that's the tack I will take against him.
So obviously the battle lines have been drawn. Brett Smiley, Dan Harrop, 2 candidates commenting on his honor. What's your take on this whole fiasco?
Well, I think that Mr. Smiley's statement saying that we have to unite the families in regards to this campaign against Cianci is completely outrageous. This type of organized crime type of communication to the public as if there's a group of families that control the city of Providence is not what our democracy is about.
What do you mean by organized crime? What do you mean?
Well, I am not colluding with these other candidates to remove Cianci, and I believe these other candidates are colluding to remove Cianci. And I think that what needs to be addressed is that Mr. Smiley's husband's father-in-law's ownership of the Foxy Lady strip club is a real issue when he's saying that he's not in the pocket of anyone else.
He's deceased.
Yes, I understand. But you know that the Cadillac Lounge was investigated for its ties to organized crime, and the strip clubs in the city have been investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for their ties to organized crime.
That is true.
And it's not the easiest thing in the world to get on the Providence Water Board. You have to know somebody to get on the Providence Water Board.
You're talking about Smiley now.
Yeah, Mr. Smiley. So these other candidates have all been tied to this administration. My daughter Mary is saying, "You tell him, Daddy."
Yeah.
And come over here, Mary.
You knew you were going to
What do you think about Buddy
get the
Cianci?
family shot.
Well, anyways,
well, you asked her. What does she think about Buddy Cianci? I guess she thinks what you think at this point.
Buddy
so
would,
beautiful baby, 7 months old, by the way. This is one of the more famous babies in Providence, and there's Kara, of course. But on subject, all right. So your candidacy, should you win the primary, and you know, I don't think folks ought to be so quick to discount you, given the multiplicity of candidates in the field and what you've done in the past. Your one-on-one with Cianci would be like characterize what you would forecast that debate to be like.
Well, Henry David Thoreau said that the world is but a canvas to our imagination. And I believe Mr. Cianci has a great imagination and an ability to help others and help himself bring things about for the city of Providence. And so I would have Buddy Cianci as part of my administration if he wanted to be part of that administration. But I would be the angel on his shoulder, making sure that he didn't do anything to hurt the citizens of the city of Providence. I do not think it should be on someone's resume that's running for mayor of Providence that he has a felony conviction for stealing from the people. I don't think that that's something that sells to the general population.
Give me 30 seconds on why you ought to be mayor.
Well, I think that the citizens in Providence are sick and tired of this corruption that's going on. I'm the only candidate that will repeal the car tax. I'm the only candidate that will tax Brown University. I'm the only candidate that will build the subway project in Providence. Together, we'll do that as a community. We have to come together as a community and make these things happen and stop the corruption that's going on in Providence. Time and time again, the same people get elected, like Mr. Solomon, who served on the city council year after year while they approved the budgets that drew us into a $2 billion unfunded pension liability.
All right, you'll show some time with them when we have them on close to the primary, correct?
Yes.
All right, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Good to see the family. Your state of mind when we come back. Stay with us. Your state of mind is important to us. Here's how you get in touch with the broadcast. Perhaps you have a thought on Chris Young's visit. Most people do have thoughts on Chris Young, what he has to say. We'll probably hear from Brown. 228-1886, state of mind at myratv.com. Here's a Facebook post that we got where you can post at Dan York Show. Teacher and state rep, no conflict of interest there, right? Writes Carol. That in reaction to Greg Amore's visit here yesterday as he and I debated the whole kneecap rug pull out from under at the end of the General Assembly session that I thought was shameful and he thought was righteous, but I appreciate the state rep coming there. Conflict of interest? I don't know. You know, some jobs just work better for state representation. Everyday jobs just don't seem to, do they? We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO and tomorrow night again right here, 7:30 on MyRITV. Good night.